Hi there. We previously reviewed Duncan Falconer's first book, which was his autobiography of his early career, in which he had joined the Royal Marines as a very young age, and upon being awarded his Green Beret, went on selection for the SBS. And the reason being was that they had lost a lot of personnel to the oil industry. There was a big demand for trained divers, and the main supply really of divers was the Navy and the SBS. So they had a requirement to recruit people to fill those slots, and the idea was they would try the idea of allowing people straight from commando training to have a go. And with a couple of his colleagues, he signed up, and there was about 200 people on his selection course. Selection back then for the SBS and the SAS were totally different tests. A long, arduous process, and he passed and joined the squadron. And in the book, he describes many aspects of the work of the Maritime Special Forces, underways where they're boarding ships at high speed at sea from inflatables, and in order to recover the ship in the event of a hijacking. Oil platform takeover similarly, working from submarines, entering and exiting underwater, all the different aspects, free-fall parachuting, and he also did a couple of years with 14th Int, the Det, and he describes the lethal game of hostile environmental surveillance against the IRA, and there were quite a few incidents there. And the book ends with a couple of hints about what he went on to do in civilian life. And now he's written a follow-up book called First Into Action Again, where he details his career after the SBS. And the prologue of the book really does set the tone for what an exciting career he had. He's in Baghdad at the height of the war on terror, and he's in a hotel, the Alhambra, where his job is advising on the security of various news crews, TV and journalists who are following the war, and they all tend to congregate in the Alhambra. And he's in his room, just in his shorts and flip-flops, and a truck bomb is driven into the complex and detonates, takes the wall, his wall of the hotel out completely. He's sent flying and wakes up in a load of rubble. But he knows that such attacks are often followed up either by close quarter assault with firearms, or by a larger truck bomb which goes through the breach and detonates inside. And indeed that's what happened. And so he's standing behind a pillar fortuitously when the second suicide device goes off, and he does manage to survive miraculously being only 30 metres from 3,000 pounds of high explosive. It's almost unheard of to survive that in any way, but he does. He gathers up his rifle and his medical bag and goes out to try and help the wounded. And one of the things he does in the book is he kind of postulates the reason for this truck bomb. The official explanation, it was Al-Qaeda, but the strong indications it was actually the work of proxies on behalf of the Iraqi government who wanted to stop the foreign press reporting on their corruption, kidnapping and torture. So they tried to blow up the entire complex where they were staying. So after that introduction, that prologue, we go back in time to the day he has left the SBS. And within 2 days, he gets a phone call from his former commanding officer, who's now running a very large and very well connected and officially sanctioned security company based in Poole. And this officer was Ram. The officer who had been responsible for developing some of the specialised maritime anti-terrorist methods used by the SBS. For example, the underways. They had pioneered the techniques of doing that, very hazardous, and they were the only people in the world at the time who were doing it. They later trained SEAL Team 6 on those procedures, and it was at Ram's instigation. Also, he managed to get them a seat at the table in many other aspects of counter-terrorism, including Northern Ireland, against a lot of high-level opposition, to the point where he sacrificed his own career for the good of his unit. So he phones Duncan and offers him a job, and the first job he's on, at the time there was a big industrial dispute at the Wapping Print Works, this new place in London where they were producing newspapers in a modern using modern methods instead of the old print methods, which were hidebound by entrenched practices, union rules and so on. Anyone who had any printing done back in the day, when I was involved in Fighting Arts magazine, I can testify to this. It was a highly specialised and highly clique-led profession. And Rupert Murdoch broke the unions, and they put up a big fight about it. He had a team on him and on his top executives and also at the plant. And Duncan was put on the team, and one of the guys he was working with was a chap that he had worked with in the Det, another Marine, who in the first book he called Max. It was actually Mac. And this was a chap who was a good friend of mine. I worked with him a lot over the years, including jobs for Ram. We both worked for Ram. And it was very interesting. It was kind of a deja vu. I had actually been offered or asked about working on the Wapping team, but it clashed with a training job I had coming up. So I never got to work with those particular guys. So his next major job for Ram, completely different one, excuse me, was to go over to Spain, to the Basque region, and at the time the Basques were being given a measure of autonomy. During Franco, they were suppressed and their identity was not allowed. But there was a slightly more enlightened Spanish government, and the Basques had been they'd set up their own, or been allowed to set up their own provincial government. It was officially recognised by Spain, and you still had the Basque separatist terrorists, the ETA, who were still active. So they were opposed to this new Basque setup as well. So what the Basque government did, they had a close protection team, presidential protection team for their government, the Risola Taldea team it was called, and Ram's company was subcontracted to train them, and then they expanded it out to a more special force unit who could conduct assaults and other forms of specialist operations, retaking oil platforms and so on, so which they had off the coast. And they turned to the Brits for this, and to Ram in particular. And this was all under the approval of HMG, the government. So he does this on his own. Duncan, he goes out, and one of the first things he does is insist on an interpreter, because everything takes twice as long when you're working through an interpreter. And when you've got a language problem, there's nuances and so on. So the job's very difficult. And the second thing he did was to brief the guys that he wanted a demonstration of skills, three phases. Firstly was just pure pistol shooting. Second was section attacks, and the third was an assault, hostage rescue. And he gave them time to prepare, and they put it on, and it was pathetic. Physically they were a mixture. They weren't fit. They couldn't run for toffee, and so he had to start from scratch. And what he did was, first of all, he told them the good news of how bad they were, and this didn't go down well in a macho culture. But then he put them through an intensive couple of weeks of dry firing with the pistol. And this is actually probably the most important training, is the dry training. It really does instill skills. It's training you can do anywhere. You don't need a range. You don't need expenditure of ammunition and so on. It is the foundation. The Rhodesians did a lot of work on this because they were always short of ammo. So some of the pistol training drills he describes were very imaginative and interesting, and the guys actually enjoyed them. A lot of people don't enjoy dry fire because they like making bangs, but after the dry firing period, he put them back on the range, and the scores had improved dramatically. And what he'd done, he'd retained the original targets with their names on and showed them. And there's nothing better than seeing for yourself. And this gained their confidence in the training methods. And at the end of it, they became a cohesive unit. And then one of the things that happened was a tabloid, this isn't in the book, but it's just something I know, a tabloid newspaper got hold of the wrong end of the stick and said British Special Forces, in particular SBS, were training the ETA, the Basque terrorists, and questions were raised, and fingers were pointed down a pool and so on, and you know, it was the usual fake news. Anyway, that's a kind of introduction to the book in some detail. His subsequent amazing life includes being a Hollywood screenwriter, talks about living the glitzy life there, anti-poaching operations in Africa, as a thriller writer. He wrote a whole series of books, a lot of them based on either SBS or 14-int operations. Obviously, one of the books, in particular, Stratton, became a movie, quite a successful movie, and then the looking after the journalists in the war zone, as mentioned in the prologue, and into the wider field of crisis management. So really, his life after leaving the military was as action-packed as in the military. And it's a fascinating read. He talks about the camaraderie you get. He worked alongside a lot of other really good soldiers. When he was in the Alhambra, first people who came looking for him were a couple of SAS guys who were protecting another news crew, and they were concerned about him, and it was really good camaraderie, as I say. So terrific book, and I'm sure our readers here would enjoy it, and also enjoy his previous book and his thrillers as well.